Hi, Roy here, and welcome again to another edition of The Right Has Left. I am your host, Roy Garton, and this podcast this week is not going to be fun. There is a lot of anger going on, and there's a lot of bitterness going on, and of course, we're talking about the Minneapolis shooting. And this is going to be my top story as I start off this podcast due to the fact that it needs a little bit of a deep dive. And there's no question about it. So let's go ahead and get into it as we talk about the shooting of Renee Nicole Good. Just because, ladies and gentlemen, it's a sad situation that we have put ourselves into with all of this is going on with ICE. And as you know, Renee is leaving behind her partner. And the widow of Renee Nicole Good, who was, of course, filmed sobbing, saying it was my fault. She's absorbing a lot of guilt over this after her partner was killed by an ICE agent. Her partner name is Rebecca Good, and here is a picture of the two together. She was 40 years of age, and she was outside the car when Renee drove towards an ICE officer, supposedly. Video is now showing that actually did not happen, and who that ICE agent then, of course, in turn opened fire, shooting the mom of a mother of three in the head and killing her. Now, Rebecca Good and her wife presently lived in Kansas City, Missouri, where they lived in the Waldo neighborhood for about 2 years, but then they decided to leave the country after President Trump was reelected in 2024 because of his stand on same-sex marriages and his dislike for gay and lesbian couples. And then they moved to Canada, as I mentioned. Then they came back and moved to Minneapolis. Neighbors said they were great people. They were not extremists. They were not terrorists. That was just a mom who loved her kids, loved her spouse, and they believed in standing up for their constitutional rights and peaceful protest, as we are all allowed to do. And the Goods, of course, was raising Renee's 6-year-old son together. Now, the Department of Homeland Security accused a 37-year-old Renee of being a domestic terrorist, as you're well aware of. Ice Barbie here went on, had a quick presser news conference immediately after the shooting to give her view of what she thought happened. Here's that clip.
Operations here in Minneapolis. Because of the adverse weather that Minneapolis has seen in recent snow, one of the vehicles became stuck and ensnared in the snow. Law enforcement were attempting to push out this vehicle, and when a mob of agitators that were harassing them all day began blocking them in, shouting at them, and impeding law enforcement operations. ICE officers and agents approached the vehicle of the individual in question, who was blocking the officers in with her vehicle, and she had been stalking and impeding their work all throughout the day. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. He used his training to save his own life and that of his colleagues. He was treated at a local hospital, has been released, and is now with family.
Now, that's just Kristi Noem's version of what happened. As you're fully aware of, J.D. Vance, of course, he went on to, again, you got to keep in mind, these people, they didn't even see the video. They didn't see anything. They just went right on and immediately went on to shoot their mouth off about what happened. And as I mentioned, J.D. Vance, of course, when they asked him about everything, he went on to say that local and state authorities had no jurisdiction on any ongoing investigation. Now, what we're referring to here, and it is still a hot news item, is the fact of the matter is that immediately the state of Minnesota wanted to do their own investigation into the shooting of what happened with that woman, and they were immediately denied any access whatsoever to the vehicle that they wanted to look at, and they're upset. And of course, J.D. Vance said they had no jurisdiction because the guy has full immunity. Now, let's talk about that just a little bit. It is true, unfortunately, how you look at it. On a federal level, I'm going to say this again, on a federal level, these ICE agents pretty much are immune from any prosecution. They are just saying they're doing the job because they are federal employees. And by law, most federal employees, except under rare circumstances, do have immunity from doing their job if they believe they are defending themselves. But on a state level, it's a whole different story. And, of course, Kash Patel and the FBI and everybody else, if they're under orders from Trump, they're going to, deny access. And normally, in the past, before this particular administration, there was good cooperation between the federal and local agencies. But the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, or the BCA, said that the case would solely be led by the FBI after BCA's access to evidence was revoked. Vance said the investigation is a federal issue, and the ICE agent who killed Renee Good is protected by absolute immunity. See, this is the whole thing. He is protected on a federal level from immunity, but absolute, that key word there, that is not true. The vice president added that Tim Walz and a bunch of radicals in Minnesota are going to go after and make this guy's life miserable just because he was doing a job that he was asked to do is preposterous. Vance claimed baselessly that Renee Good was a part of a left-wing network of people who are trying to incite violence against our law enforcement officers. I'm sorry, Vice President Vance, but that is total bullshit. And the vice president added this is a classic terrorism. Again, bullshit. And we cannot say that when the far left fringe is inciting violence against our brave law enforcement officials that we're no longer going to enforce the law. That's rewarding the very people who are engaged in this garbage. He continued to disparage Good as he answered questions from reporters characterized her as a victim of left-wing ideology. That young mother shows up and decides that they're going to throw their car in front of ICE officers who are enforcing legitimate law. You've got to be a little brainwashed to get that point across of you, Vance said. Okay, let's dissect that just a little bit, ladies and gentlemen. As you are fully aware of by the video, and I'm going to show you right here and now 2 video clips of that particular instance that Good was involved with. Now, the first clip has been on national news this past week. And as you watch it, there are 2 things that you need to understand here. One, even though the ICE agent is telling her to get out of the effing car, you can see that she is turning her wheels to the right and she's just trying to leave. She is not enticing anything. And even if an ICE agent tells you to get out of that effing car, under what circumstances, you do have constitutional rights. And, if she's trying to leave the scene of the, scene, some people say if an officer orders you to get out of the car, you're supposed to get out of the car. And it depends on, what charges or what reasoning do you have to get out of the car. She's not, at this point in time, not breaking any law. She says, I'm just going to leave. They were there videotaping the ICE agents, as they have a perfect legal right to do. They're not infringing at this point in time on anything. And they said she was blocking the entrance, so she's turning her wheels. Now, another video of this incident just came out yesterday, and I'm now going to show you this video. And as you can see, Miss Good right here has a smile on her face. She's waving cars by. She is not bothering anybody. Her partner is off to the right there videotaping this. Now, this third-party video here of the 2 together is just so sad. She's got a smile on her face, and she's not bothering anybody. And again, you can hear the ICE agent order to tell her to get out of the effing car. And that's when she turns to her wheels, and then this agent, for whatever reason, thinks that he's going to hit her, which she's not trying to do, and then the shots are fired, as you can see, and then this is the sad part. Then I don't know if it's the ICE agent that did shoot her or another ICE agent close by. Then he calls her a effing bitch.
Get out of the car. Whoa!
That is really professional, isn't it? Really professional. And do you think that the federal government, Kristi Noem or anybody, is going to do anything about that? They probably think, that's what she was. She's a terrorist. She is an effing bitch. You know, this is what our country has come to. All right. So again, God Almighty help us all. And, you know, even to go on, here's Caroline Leavitt, you know, Trump's mouthpiece, who I swear to God, I sometimes wonder where she gets her intelligence from. But she said that the fatal shooting in Minneapolis by ICE agents is a part of a larger, sinister left-wing movement at the White House. That she said when she was there, and she kicked off her briefing addressing the fatal shooting in Minneapolis. She doesn't even say, you know, our condolences or anything. She said that the deadly incident occurred as a result of a larger, sinister left-wing movement that has spread across our country, adding that federal law enforcement officers are under organized attack. Oh, dear God. Peaceful protesting is an organized attack. And she cited a recent DHS statistic that there has been almost a 1,200% increase in assaults and violence against federal immigration agents. Yeah, okay. So I don't know where they got these statistics, but peaceful protesting, you know, if they're going to block entrances again, you know, all of a sudden protesters, no matter what they do, are terrorists. If they block these paramilitary people from doing anything. Okay, if that's what you believe, all right, they're all terrorists now. And again, you know, Caroline Leavitt, Kristi Noem, Kash Patel, J.D. Vance, these are all Trump's handpicked people. They're all part of Project 2025. They're all in sync together for the culture of white privilege, you know, white supremacy. You know, the white people come first. Everybody else, if you have brown skin or anything else, we're going to get you out of here. We're going to ship you out. Doesn't this remind you of 1939 Germany? Doesn't this kind of remind you that you know, these ICE agents are now paramilitary Gestapo style type people? The way they just throw people out, you know, jerk them out of the car, and now they're starting to shoot people at random for whatever reason, if they even, you know, look at them wrong, and or you know, it's just sad what this is coming to, and it just bothers me to death. So let's move on. Let's talk about the ICE agent that shot Mrs. Good. All right. This is the person that you know, did the deal, and now let's talk about him. There he is. So this guy is Jonathan Ross. All right. Now, according to court documents and accounts from federal officials, Ross is the one that shot into Good's car that Minneapolis state law enforcement agencies are not getting any access to. While she was driving away from the site of an ICE operation on Portland Avenue and East 34th Street. All right? Again, let's look at the two there. There he is with his little mouthpiece pulled up over his face. That's all the ICE agents do. They don't want to reveal who they are. You know, they'll go out and, you know, terrorize these people, but, you know, we don't want you to know who we are. And, of course, the federal government says, well, that's because of the safety of the agents. But as far as the safety of the citizens that they're going after, or even the you know, people who are supposedly in violation of immigration status, you know, that's okay. You can see who they are, but we don't want you to see who we are. Well, there you are, guys, ladies and gentlemen. That's the agent, and you know, again, they labeled Good as a domestic terrorist who attempted to strike and kill this guy. All right, and so he fired into it. And J.D. Vance even said, "Do you think he is just a little sensitive about what he's doing?" Now, in all fairness, again, I'm going to be transparent here, but I'm going to tell you why I think personally why this guy did what he did. All right. Now, that ICE agent, and Jonathan, last summer he was on a particular incident and doing his job, and of course he was picking up another illegal immigrant, and the guy took off and he was dragged in his vehicle and he needed 30 stitches. Okay, and this happened on June 17th in Bloomington. All right. And of course, as you saw in the previous video, Kristi Noem spoke about that June incident too. They give this ICE agent high praise, 10 years on the job. He's a great guy. They did have to go after an illegal immigrant. So why am I telling about you all this, why this happened, is because this is what I think struck a nerve with this guy. I think the guy suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, and I'll tell you why I think that. That was probably a pretty terrible incident that happened to this ICE agent, all right? But he was cleared to go back to duty. And even if with the turning of the wheels and Mrs. Good was trying to drive away, she may have come in close contact with him if he was in front of the vehicle, even though she wasn't trying to run him over. But in his mind, under the situation at hand, he may have thought that. And because of what he went through before, being dragged, in the window of another car all that time, he probably thought the same thing, and his mind triggered, and so he immediately went for his, his gun and shot her. It's just, she's going to try to kill me because of what happened before. Now, that's my analysis. Now, I've had quite a few psychology courses in college. And my wife got master hours as a clinical psychologist, and we've both been talking about this, and that's the only thing I can think of, unless he just doesn't like anybody protesting, that he might have gone for his weapon and shot her, is because of the fact of the matter is that might have triggered something from this past incident that he had in June. That's the only thing I could think of, unless this guy just wanted to do that. But that could happen, because this particular, now a lot of ICE agents aren't well trained. This particular guy was well trained. All right. So I don't know what other excuse I can give that this guy would do this, other than he had a trigger moment and in his brain that he thought that she was going to hit him, and the incident from past June went through his mind, and he freaked out and went for his gun, and this is what happened. In other words, I don't think he should have been back on duty yet unless he's gone through therapy from what happened. There's no record that this guy went through therapy. If it is, of course, it's confidential. It's between doctor and him. But he should have, and this is the only thing I could think of is, the guy suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder from that past incident, and because that would be traumatic to anybody. I'm not sticking up for the guy for what he did. I'm saying why I think he did what he did, and if that would be the only reason. It could have been a psychological thing that happened right there and triggered him, that he thought he was going to get run over, and that's what happened. In other words, the only other thing is that he just wanted to take her life because he was pissed off at protesters and thought he was terrorists. But I'm giving this guy a one-off right here and there, as that it could have been something that triggered from the past incident and freaked him out. That's my only analysis. On this show, I try so hard to be fair to everybody on both sides, and that's the only thing I could think of. Now, moving on, the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry, he also had some comments to say, and Jacob Fry is a young man who just recently, in fact, has been elected mayor, and he had some words to say about this whole incident. Watch this clip.
What they are doing is not to provide safety in America. What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. They're ripping families apart. They're sowing chaos on our streets. And in this case, quite literally killing people. So they are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying, getting killed. As soon as it happened and we learned of the incident, we had several priorities. The first, of course, was to get the victim to the hospital and to get care as soon as possible. To the family, I'm so deeply sorry. There's nothing that I can say right now that's going to make you or your relatives or the friends of the victim feel any better. There were, I believe, 2 Minneapolis police officers that responded and were in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. The second was to get ICE off of the scene. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of ICE and federal officers that were there at the time. Having them there was only causing more chaos. Having them there was only making a difficult situation even more problematic, and one that, yes, they created themselves. There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. That's on you.
You know, he dropped the F-bomb there, and I don't blame him. And he was correct. You know, crime in Minneapolis has not been an issue. The only reason these ICE agents are there is because Trump ordered them there, because he doesn't like the Somalis. And he thinks that again, this is all going back to people who have migrated to the United States. I said this once before in previous shows. I'm going to say it again. 97% of these immigrants that have been working here in the United States have no criminal record. They're hardworking families who are trying to make a living because they can't make it in their own country. And yes, many of them are here illegally, or have, went state past their visas or their green cards. Okay, so what? So what the F what? Does that make them rapists, murderers, killers, crazy people, insane people? Are 100% of the immigrants that are here in the U.S., do they all fall under that category? Absolutely not. All right. ICE was supposed to be going after simply those people, the murderer, the rapists, the insane people that cross the borders, according to Donald Trump. That's 3% of all of them. But now they are under orders to arrest 3,000 people a day. All right? And to do that, it doesn't matter who you are, what you are. If you look like you're an illegal immigrant, ICE is going to come after you. And that's why American people are scared shitless right now, okay, is because of those standing orders. Now, and I've said this on my other previous podcasts as I wrap up this segment, these ICE agents have been given a huge budget. The money that was pulled from Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the Obamacare bill, which again the House just recently passed a bill to reinstate that. But I want to wrap the segment up by going over this press release about recruiting even more ICE agents. Now, some of this I'm going to be quoting exactly, okay, but listen to this. After receiving more than 220,000 applications to join ICE from patriotic Americans, ICE blew past its original hiring target of 10,000 new officers and agents within a year. In fact, we have more than doubled our officers and agents from 10,000 to 22,000. With these new patriots on the team, we will be able to accomplish what many say was impossible and fulfill President Trump's promise to make America safe again. I didn't know we were unsafe. The good news is that thanks to the big, beautiful bill that President Trump signed, we have an additional 12,000 ICE officers and agents on the ground across the country, said Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin. That's a 120% increase in our workforce, and that's just about 4 months. Thousands of these newly hired officers and agents are already deployed nationwide and actively supporting enforcement operations, including arrest, investigations, and removals, and shooting people. The accelerated hiring tempo has allowed ICE to place officers in the field faster than any previous recruitment effort in the agency's history. The recruitment initiative utilized data-driven outreach efforts to recruit qualified patriotic Americans from across the country. As a result, ICE was able to exceed its hiring surge target while maintaining rigorous standards for training and readiness. ICE continues to accept applications and encourages individuals interested in federal law enforcement careers to learn more at joinice.gov. Well, now I didn't just write that. That is actually on our government websites about patriotic Americas and culture. Now, the word, support your culture was on that actually, and they removed that little part because, as you know, that sounds racist. Support your culture? What culture? White privilege culture. Support that. Be a patriotic American and be a white privileged person and join ICE. Now, they got smart after some people started talking about that, and they removed that little part about your culture as that sounded racist. So now they're back to just saying join ICE. Now, anybody with a certain amount of mindset, can read through that. ICE announced that it was initiating a new $100 million recruitment campaign that is referred to as a wartime recruitment strategy. The campaign, as the Washington Post put it, will target people who have attended UFC fights, listened to patriotic podcasts, or shown an interest in guns and tactical gear. That's who they want in there. By golly, any organization that goes from 10,000 to 22,000 in 6 months has hired some very unqualified people, if that organization is to say, ICE. Now, I'm going to pause right there and talk to you about that. That is true. To now join ICE, you don't even need to have a high school education. You don't even have gone to college. They'll train you how to fire a gun, your Glock, whatever. Just join ICE, and we're going to put you out there with your little mask, and you go out and round up illegal immigrants. Okay. Usually, even on a city police force, they require today that you have at least an associate's degree in something, law enforcement, business, something, and then, of course, you go to the academy and train. Well, these ICE agents, of course, like they said, if you watch UFC fights, or you like to go out there and, shoot your Glock or go deer hunting, something, you might be a good candidate to join ICE, do you wear cameos when you're out in the field? By golly, you could be a good ICE agent there. So, as this article said, that's kind of what they're going after. But, you give these employees badges and masks and gear and Sig Sauer P320 semi-automatic pistols, or maybe a Glock 19, to which the agency began transitioning to last two. You can go out there and become an ICE agent, folks. This is a big problem. It really is. I mean, these ICE agents have very little training, and that's scary. And this is why you see the unfortunate instances like you do with the good shooting. Is a woman in her so young, her life ending, is because and this agent that did the shooting, he's a 10-year veteran, so this guy ought to known better. And again, if this was been a regular police officer, they would not have pulled out their gun and shot. They would have got out of the way and maybe told her to stop. But this is not an incident where you've got to fire your weapon and kill somebody. Now, if she was coming at him high speed and trying to run him over, actually singling him, that's a different story. She was just turning her wheels to the right and trying to leave. And again, when you got this guy that called her a effing bitch. I mean, is that the maturity of a professional law enforcement officer to say those words? Is it? I mean, it's just unreal. It really is, and it's sad. It just bothers me to death that you see something like that. All right. Let's move on. That's that piece there on ICE and the shooting, and of course it continues on with Minnesota trying to get access to evidence and try to do their part. Again, the guy does have, on a federal level, this guy has immunity. He probably will never see a day in court unless something dramatically changes. This is just this woman is a victim of the aggressiveness of ICE at this day and age and what's going on in our United States, and there may be more. And sadly, you can't do a damn thing about it. This is the world we live in now. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Trump and Venezuela. This is something else that's going on. First, some decent good news. Trump, the Republican Party is beginning to grow some gonads a little bit, and they have passed a bill to try to limit Trump's war powers under the War Powers Act. And he got pissed off and called up the senator from Maine and cussed her out and said, "What the hell are you doing?" As 6 Republicans jumped ship and joined the Democrats in creating a bill to limit Trump's invasion powers of Venezuela. And they advanced this resolution limiting future U.S. military force in Venezuela without congressional approval. And that's what you're really supposed to have. This has been since World War II. It took Congress to say we are going to go and go at war with Japan and Germany. Okay, this is what Congress is supposed to be involved. But as I said before in other broadcasts, the way Trump's getting around this is using the word that they are terrorists. The president of Venezuela was a terrorist. The drug running off the shores is terrorism, okay? And it's now going into here in the United States with ICE taking on everybody, because everybody that is peacefully protesting are now terrorists. So therefore, we have the right to gun you down. We have a right to blow up these boats off the shores of Venezuela because they are terrorists. This should scare you, ladies and gentlemen. It scares me. This is the world we are now living in. And the final resolution, though, is not guaranteed to pass. The House will probably vote it down because Trump still, has buddies in the House of Representatives and Johnson and, so. But it was a symbolic rebuke of President Donald Trump. U.S. oversight in Venezuela. It has to happen. It has to happen. Now, Trump has declined to say specifically how long the U.S. aims to control the country, but when asked by the New York Times if it would be months, a year, or longer, he replied, "I would have to say much longer." So we still have hostages, as you know, in Venezuela, And even though now the U.S. controls, supposedly, Venezuela, those hostages have not been released. We're working on it, says Venezuela, to release them. But so far, those Americans that are in Venezuela are still being locked up. Okay? And again, you've got Delcy Rodriguez, who said that Venezuela is not at war, and they welcomed the United States to come into the country and do what they can to get oils back on track and get those fields working again. But here's the other thing, J.D. Vance again. He went on to claim that whether every president, Democrat or Republican, believes that the Wars Powers Act is fundamentally a fake and unconstitutional law. And Congress does not need to be involved to declare a war against a country. And he says the president of the United States, Donald Trump, agrees with that. The president has a right to do what he needs to do to control our country. J.D. Vance, this guy from Ohio, is, again, he's totally out in left field. And this brings me on to what's going on with Trump and wanting to control the rest of the world. What can I say? Yeah, as you're well aware of, he wants to get into taking control of all these countries right here. Greenland, that's in the news. Now, Iran's got issues. He wants to control Iran. He wants to control Cuba. He wants to control Mexico and Colombia. So all of these countries, from the Canadians to the Greenland to Mexico, those are on his list that he wants to, if all else fails, invade and take control of. Greenland, they're freaking serious about going into that country and taking it from Denmark. First he was kind of, very nice about NATO, because if we invade Greenland, of course, NATO is going to get upset. But now Trump says, I don't give a crap about NATO. You guys don't do anything anyway. Vice President Vance and Trump, they have been to Greenland several times, and they say they have to take it in the name of national security, which is, again, bullshit. We already have a base there. Greenland has been very gracious about letting us have a military presence in their country, and we have, that base is fully occupied in as far as protection for the United States. But that's not enough. What they want is the minerals, the same reason we invaded Venezuela. They wanted the oil. It has nothing to do with security. It has nothing to do with, in case of Venezuela, the drugs. That was just a lame excuse so they could get the oil. And why do we want the minerals, and why do they want the oil? They say in the interest of the United States. But again, as I get into the story here a little bit later, I'm finding out that Trump is starting to, figure out ways to pocket all of this stuff for himself and his family. And I'll show you that in just a moment. Now, when reporters asked the White House about his message would be about two European leaders who rejected the idea that the Arctic territory ruled by Denmark is for sale, Vance would just say, take Trump at his word. So what we're asking our European friends is to take the security of that landmass more seriously. Because if they're not, the United States is going to have to do something about it. In other words, we want the entire world to kiss our butt. Whatever the United States wants, the rest of the world is just going to have to go along with it. If they don't like it, that's just too dang bad. We are the most powerful country in the world, and we're going to take whatever we want. Doesn't that sound like 1939 Germany? That's what Hitler wanted to do. He wanted to control the world. And so, this is the most aggressiveness this country has ever been since I have, been around on this planet. Before World War II, we have, that's why they changed the name of the Department of War instead of Department of Defense. This is now, we are becoming a very aggressive nation that is pissing off a lot of our friends that have been our allies, and, from internally here in the United States to around the world. I don't know what's wrong with these people. They're sick. They really are. And to see what we're doing, he wants Canada to be our 51st state. And the sad thing about it is Congress is not doing a damn thing except sitting on their thumbs. The Democrats can't do anything because they're not in control. That may change in the midterms, but we've got a country, they're scared. That's, they don't want to do anything. Behind the scenes, they say they're angry and upset, but publicly they won't do anything because they're scared. Their reelection and lining their pocketbooks is more important than, sticking up for the constituents. That's really what it's all about. And of course, Secretary Marco Rubio is expected to meet with the leaders of Denmark and Greenland soon, Vance said, and he said the U.S. will continue to engage in diplomacy, and if that doesn't work out, they'll just send the military up there. Now, as I wrap up this podcast, I told you that I was going to talk to you about this thing with Venezuela and the oil. And this just came out yesterday. I try to wait as long as I can before I tape these podcasts to get the latest news on everything. This just came out yesterday, though, when Trump had the meeting with the oil executives about how to get the oil from Venezuela and how the United States can, get that oil. And you got to listen to this last part very carefully as I wrap up this podcast, because you're going to see what I am talking about here. The Department of Energy statement offers kind of a clue here. Listen to this very carefully, ladies and gentlemen. All proceeds from the sale of Venezuela crude oil and oil products will first settle in U.S.-controlled accounts, offshore oil accounts, at globally recognized banks to guarantee the legitimacy and the integrity of the ultimate distribution of proceeds. Who's controlling that? Donald Trump. There's a plausible way for the administration to control the proceeds while avoiding treating them as federal receipts in the first place, running it through the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Asset Control, or OFAC, which administers sanctions programs and can block assets tied to sanctioned parties and then license certain transactions under specified items. Instead of treating the money as federal revenue, the administration would consider the proceeds as Venezuela-owned funds frozen in U.S.-controlled bank accounts and then spend the money by authorizing specific transfers via OFAC licenses. The government would control the movement of the money by deciding what transfers are permitted and under what conditions. The White House could then claim the proceeds are controlled by the executive branch because the Treasury controls access. In other words, the administration wouldn't spend taxpayer dollars. Instead, it would authorize the release of Venezuela's frozen money and use that licensing power to steer the money where it wants. The Venezuelan people's benefit, quote unquote, would come from licenses granted to non-government parties to spend money on development projects. The American people's benefit would come from licenses that channel money to U.S. exporters, oil field service firms, engineering contractors, etc. A concern is if enormous sums can be effectively allocated through sanctions licensing decisions, you've created a quasi-budget process inside the executive branch, but without the usual appropriations transparencies, committee oversight, and statutory programs constraints. So, even if the OFAC route is technically federal spending, it can function as such. If that's where this is headed, the central question isn't just, is it legal? Is it also, do we want sanctions licensing to become a substitute for appropriations, especially when the president openly sells it as personal control over money? Did you just understand what I just read? Trump himself said he's going to control these global banks and the funding. There will be no transparency. He can authorize this through the Treasury or whatever else because he's got his own people in there. We no longer have independent audit personnel because they all got fired. You've got his people in there now controlling entirely everything in the executive branch and the government. So if this all happens, Congress will have zero And transparency is the money being sent like it's supposed to be. We, the U.S. citizens, we're not going to benefit from it. We're not going to see jack from this, other than maybe lower gas prices, and we're all going to go, oh, that's cool, Trump lowered the price of gas. And, but as far as the money of all these billions of dollars being funneled in here, it's how are we going to see it? It's just like all of our tax dollars now are funding ICE, We're funding all of these uneducated people out there getting their Glocks and everything, and unfortunately just becoming a quasi-military operation. And and now he wants to send the military into Greenland and perhaps Mexico now, and again in the name of anti-terrorism cartel battling. So you got to watch all that, folks. And as I end this episode of The Right Has Left, I'm going to leave you with the picture of this lady right here. Okay. You just look at that as I end this podcast, and think about if you think this woman right here is a terrorist. And if you think that, I beg to differ. But what happened to this woman? And now her spouse Rebecca is without her wife. And you think about Renee Nicole Good here, and you remember those videos, and you tried to tell me that this woman is a terrorist and that she tried to run over an ICE officer. If you think that, God help you. Until then, you try to have a good week. This is Roy Garton for The Right Has Left. Until next time.